Thank you. You get to sit in the middle. Yeah.
The second pillar, which is sustaining economic success, with the topic here being government accountability. A key ingredient to sustaining economic success is, of course, good governance, a cornerstone to building sound business environments that we depend on. Engendering confidence will encourage more entrepreneurial decisions, more investment, and bold planning for the future. I know you all are looking forward to Marla speaking this afternoon, but Marla will be moderating this discussion for us, so I will introduce her now. So Marla is our keynote speaker, and as I said, will be moderating this discussion. Marla is a renowned economist with a vision and a passion for transforming and strengthening not only economies across the Caribbean, but also their associated societies and communities. She has the unique ability to draw together different strands from different areas and disciplines, leading to something that is increasingly understood as something we all need, a holistic and joint thinking approach, a really good look at the big picture. Recently, the DART group did commission Marla to analyze the impact of beach erosion at 7 Mile Beach, which we did hear about a little bit about earlier. Her work emphasizes the economic and environmental implications, highlighting the need for proactive measures to protect vital natural resources. Marla is pivotal in fostering public-private sector engagement and shaping decision-making processes. I personally do go to your website every month and look at your updates, so definitely thank you for that. So please help me and welcome Marla Dukharan to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, this is on. Good afternoon. Sit wherever you want.
Thank you. You get to sit in the middle. Yeah.
Okay. Can everybody hear me? Yes, I think I hear myself. Good afternoon again. Thank you for the very warm introduction, Omari. And I have the pleasure this afternoon of, as you would see from the agenda, chairing this panel where we will speak about the government's accountability scorecard that the Chamber announced that they will introduce some months ago. It was announced. I will introduce my guest speakers here. We have Sue Winspear, who has been the Auditor General of the Cayman Islands since 2016, and she will demit office next month, so we're very lucky to have her before she takes off. And of course, Mr. Franz Manderson, he's the Deputy Governor and the head of the Civil Service of the Cayman Islands. And next month, he will celebrate his lucky 13th year as Deputy Governor. I think that deserves a clap. So you might recall when Pilar was here and there was a discussion around we should have a plan. We should know where we want to go. I mean, I'm a strong advocate for having a vision for your country. But then what? Like in my country, we had a Vision 2020, which as soon as there was a change in government got stuck on a shelf, if not destroyed. And so the whole issue of implementation, which we know we have a deficit of in the Caribbean, is really driven by accountability for the implementation. So we're going to talk about the scorecard, but before we get to talking about the scorecard, which is about the accountability for implementation, we're going to talk about accountability more broadly. No better people than these two folks here to talk about accountability. And so I want each of you, you can, well, I'm guessing ladies first,
yes.
Explain, Madam Auditor General, from your role, why is accountability so important, and how does your office drive accountability in the Cayman Islands?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Lovely to be here. As one of only 2 independent officers of Parliament, me, as the Auditor General in my office, and the Ombudsman, that's Sharon Ralston, and her office, are completely independent of government and are really key sort of pillars of the accountability framework. So we sometimes get called watchdogs and things like that. I don't like that so much. But in being auditor of government, we are about driving improvement, and we are about holding the government, and that's the civil service that we primarily work through, because I can't look at policy, but I can look at the implementation of policy and holding government to account. And how I do this is by doing the financial audit of the 47 entities that comprise the public service. Many of my clients are in the room, because that's the statutory authorities, government companies, as well as all the ministries and the entire public sector. And we do that to international standards. We do it to international auditing standards, and our clients work to international accounting standards, IPSAS or IFRS. And of course, and we have clean opinions. We've come miles as a country, Cayman, in terms of the quality of the financial reporting and the financial statements and financial management. And that's important because that all feeds into our credit rating and those sorts of things ultimately. So that's all good. The other thing we do, as well as doing the financial audit, is performance audits. And as the name suggests, it's a sort of unique public sector audit skill, but it is looking at the economy, efficiency and effectiveness and the value the public get from public services. Now, my office is as big as the resources I'm given, so we can't do the 60, 70 that I used to be doing in the UK when I worked in the National Audit Office over there. We do a handful each year. We're contracted to do 3 to 5. We usually do 5 to 7. So we look at things, and I'm really grateful that Miss Juliet mentioned this morning our one on employment prospects for Caymanians. We've got a PAC hearing, and I'll talk about PAC next week, looking at our recent performance audit, which is developing a sustainable, what the government's approach to developing a sustainable economy, both of which are very relevant to today's conversations. And the key bit of the accountability comes from the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament, where they hold hearings and invite witnesses in and question. So that, along with the media and us trying to promote our work, I think does hold the government accountable. Inevitably, my job's about improvement, so the focus tends to be on the things that haven't happened and what happens next and the recommendations I make. But as I say, there is a lot of improvement, and a lot of things do move on. So that's my role, but it's really important to say I am not part of government. This is my biggest bugbear. Oh, but you're part of government. No, I'm independent of government and I audit government, because I think that's really important people know that, and the Constitution protects that. I take direction from nobody, not even the governor.
I love that.
So do I. So do I. I try to use that power responsibly, though.
I don't use your reports enough, so I'll be reaching out to you a bit more. Deputy Governor, tell us why accountability is important to you, and how does your office support accountability?
Good afternoon, everyone. Jeez. Okay.
It's after lunch, come on.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. A special good afternoon to my amazing civil servants who are here, and our brothers and sisters in the SAGCs. It's a real pleasure for me to be here. So, as Deputy Governor and head of the Civil Service, I sort of have two functions. As Deputy Governor, my job is to support Her Excellency in the work that she's doing. She spoke a bit around her reserve powers on the security, good governance. And then the major part of my role is head of the Civil Service. So my job is to make things happen. It's as simple as that.
You're the action guy.
Yes, and to make sure that the civil service performs. Each year, politicians get up and make promises to the citizens, and when they do get elected, then my job is to make sure that they can deliver on those promises. Once they give us very, very clear direction as to what they want to achieve, then it's our job to deliver those policies and projects that they have promised to the people of the Cayman Islands. So accountability is absolutely critical, not just around the delivery, but accountability in performance. We have launched our new strategic plan, which has a focus area on accountability. Accountability for ourselves as to how we perform as civil servants, accountability for our teams, that we hold them accountable, and of course, as I said earlier, accountable for delivering for the people of the Cayman Islands. Now, the civil service gets a lot of criticism, some deserved, some not. And the biggest thing is, well, there's no accountability in the civil service. Nobody gets fired. Everybody's having a good time. I'm here to tell you that that's not true. Accountability across the civil service has improved dramatically over the last few years. How have we done that? We have made sure that our leaders are upskilled so that they are having the leadership capabilities to lead their teams, lead their departments effectively, that they are holding their staff to account, that they are having the courageous conversations, and that they have the systems in place that when they do want to make hard decisions, it supports them. So we have reformed our performance management systems. Everyone has a performance agreement that they're held to account. In December and January, we are having those assessments between 1 and 5. Not everybody gets a 5. Some people get below 3, which is below standard, and those persons are then put on a performance improvement plan to give them an opportunity to improve. But if they don't improve, they're going to come to you, the private sector, right? So
they're going to be looking for a job.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So we've had to have conversations with persons to say, you may be a better fit in the private sector, not here. I'm guilty. I've said it. You'll have to decide whether they're a fit for you. But it's the government services that we provide. We have a monopoly on all our services. That's it. If you don't like the services at your bank, you close your account and you go somewhere else. If you don't like the services you got at CBC or the passport office or at WRC, there's nowhere else for you to go. So my message to the civil servants is because we have these monopoly on services, we are on the overriding responsibility to provide the very best, world class. Mm-hmm. Because people, if they get fed up, they'll leave and go somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So we want to make sure. So answer your question, accountability is alive and well in our civil service, and it's getting better every day.
I love it. Mm-hmm. Thanks for that. Mm-hmm. So I have a question for the audience. When you look around the Caribbean, and I know a lot of you in the room are from all over the world, including the Caribbean, when you think about what's the country that you would pinpoint as being the one that made the most positive change or the most progress in the last 10 to 12 years, anybody has any suggestions in the Caribbean as to which country might be the one? Besides Cayman. Sorry, besides Cayman. Yeah. I forgot to qualify my question. Besides Cayman. Barbados, Bahamas. Okay. Jamaica? Yeah. Okay, so from an economic standpoint, when you look at the numbers, Barbados, no, sorry. Barbados defaulted in 2018. Bahamas has been on the verge of default for the last at least 5 years. So I would politely disagree. When I look around the Caribbean, the country that has made the most progress from a default in 2011 to where it is now, having had consistent credit rating upgrades, having the lowest level of poverty it has ever had. As a matter of fact, had the lowest level of poverty ever in 2019, just before the pandemic. And the lowest unemployment rate. As a matter of fact, they have the opposite problem. They don't have enough labor in Jamaica. And when you think about where Jamaica started, right? When you think about what Jamaica looked like in 2011, I don't know how many of you would be familiar, it was not a good place at all. And yes, Jamaica still has a lot of problems that it needs to address. Of course, crime, criminality, homicide rate, etc., being one of the major ones. But from a socioeconomic standpoint, Jamaica has made the most progress in the English-speaking Caribbean in the past 10 or 12 years, apart from Cayman. And one of the fundamental reasons for that, I think, and it's something that I've talked a lot about and I write a lot about, I've done an interview with the chairman of an interesting institution called the EPOC in Jamaica, the Economic Program Oversight Committee. So when Jamaica defaulted in 2011, they had to go to the IMF for the umpteenth time and beg the IMF to take them on one more time. And so the private sector, civil society, the opposition, even members of government came together to form this committee that basically held the government to account for doing the things that the government had agreed to do, which they had never done before. They had agreed to in the past and they never did it. But you needed this body basically to hold a stick over them, in a sense. And so this Economic Program Oversight Committee was born, and for the past 10 years or so, 10, 11 years, every quarter they receive data from the government in terms of what was achieved, what wasn't achieved, what is the inflation rate, unemployment rate, growth rate, fiscal deficit, level of reserves, et cetera, and then they come to the public. We heard the governor talk earlier about communication. They come to the public on a quarterly basis. Literally, the chairman of the EPOC sits on the corner by the rum shop and explains to the Jamaican people in layman's terms, this is what the government said it was going to do. This is what it did in fact achieve. This is why it didn't achieve everything. This is how we're going to wheel and come again. And this is what we're going to do for the next quarter. So this has been a huge tool of accountability in Jamaica, which I credit as being fundamental to the improvement that we've seen in the past 12 years or so in Jamaica. And this EPOC was the inspiration for the Government Accountability Scorecard that the Chamber announced some time ago, which, by the way, is very much in a conceptual phase. Deputy Governor, maybe you can share with us your thoughts on the conversation you had with the Chamber around it, the fact that we have to wait till there is a new government installed before it can be designed and implemented.
Yes, so we did have that conversation a few months ago. Our recommendation, which they accepted, was this was a lot of danger if you try to implement this in the middle of a government's administration or term. So the Chamber agreed to put it in place after the election. So as you know, after an election, a new government is formed. They set up their strategic policy statement. They set out all the outcomes that they want to achieve for the persons. So in the civil service, once we get those very clear marching orders, then it's our job to deliver. Anything that shines the light on government's performance, I think is a good thing.
Good.
So I certainly welcome what the Chamber wants to do. Anything that is measured gets done. Mm-hmm. So again, I could see them, making my job a little easier actually, by helping make sure that there is a sense of urgency, that there is accountability. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a good idea. Like you said, it's in the very early stages, yeah. So I would have to do a lot more collaboration. Our job, of course, is to support the government. And the last thing I want to see our civil service doing is being sort of accused of making the government look bad. So I would have to be very careful about how information is supplied to the Chamber. I don't want, Minister Bryan saying, DG, why are you giving all this information to the Chamber? Because technically, it's, we share implementation. Mm-hmm. So we want to make sure, I'm sure Minister Bryan would be supportive of the whole accountability. It's how that information is supplied and then built in areas of flexibility. So, the Minister of Tourism can have a really nice strategic policy statement of increasing tourism. But if there's a hurricane or if there is something that goes wrong, yeah. Then how do you implement those things?
Right.
How do you balance that? There's always going to be some crisis that comes along that takes the team away from priority that the minister has set. So overall, I think the concept is great, it's applaudable, but we just want to make sure that we work out the details so that it can be implemented.
Absolutely, and I should have mentioned that the EPOC in Jamaica was governed by an MOU between the EPOC and the government, so that all of those details are worked out and you have a mutual understanding of how this relationship works. But I think when you look at a strategic policy statement or even a budget, how many budgets, I mean, I can't tell you how many budgets I've listened to. And, you know, literally, I'm not talking about Cayman here. You know, it's a repeat of last year. What have you done? These finance ministers just come and say whatever they feel like saying, and not Cayman, and they don't say, well, I said this last year and this is what I've done.
Yeah.
So I feel like whether it's a strategic policy statement and or the budget and the goals outlined, there must be a mechanism, and that's what this scorecard aims to do, a mechanism to say, these are the things the government said it's going to do, not that we asked them to do. These are the things they said they're going to do, these are the timelines, and then you provide the information on a quarterly basis as to what targets have been met, what targets haven't been met, why, and how do we, with some flexibility, how do we move forward? Ms. Auditor General, could you share with us your ideas around the jumps in Jamaica, which is something I didn't know about until I had a conversation with her. Was that yesterday?
Yesterday. Yes. And I didn't know about EPOC until I had a conversation with Marla. I think I'd start by sort of talking about populism and the fact that we now have globally politicians that say things and draw on facts that are actually not fact-checked and are not at all true. In my role, it is all about data, it's all about evidence. I make judgments based purely on data and evidence, and a lot of what I do is about trying to get things out into the public domain, which is where they should be, that maybe aren't in the public domain for whatever reason or are hidden away somewhere, and then drawing these different data sets together and drawing conclusions from that on how a part of government is functioning and operating, how it's providing value. So anything, I think, that drives that transparency, and through that transparency you drive greater accountability back to the people, is a good thing.
Absolutely.
EPOC sounds good. I'm really taken with JAMP, JAMPJM.org, if you want to look it up, which is in Jamaica. So interestingly, when I was asked that question, I would have said Jamaica anyway, because of what I know is happening over there. And this is their Jamaican accountability meter portal, where you've got citizens that have come together and are publishing and putting data sets out there for the public. So there's one on an MP scorecard, there's stuff on procurement, there's stuff on financial spending. They work very closely with the audit office over there, as you'd expect. So that to me is a great idea. I'd love to do something like that for Cayman when I leave office, or work with people to do that. And again, it's not drawing conclusions, it's just putting data out there to enable people to make their own judgments. But it also means that when, and again, I'm not saying anything about Cayman, but globally, it's easy to make claims, but you need to be able to have the sort of facts that sit beneath it. So I'd fully support it. The only thing I would say, and I mean this sincerely, I came from the UK. The UK's got over 600 MPs. It's got 400,000 civil servants. We are trying to compete and be world class when we are very small. And the infrastructure you need if you're running a country is the same in Cayman as it is in the UK, pretty much, apart from security, which obviously is a retained responsibility. So it's also got to be engineered in a way that's as light and as effective as possible. So, I often get with audit, but you say we have to do business cases and we can't just go over here and buy something for 100 grand from this person or this company. And I keep saying back, they don't have to be over-engineered. They can be really, really short, but you've got to justify why you need something and why, in that example, it's okay not to get quotes from other providers of that particular good or service. So anything, I think, that would help improve that transparency and accountability has got to be a good thing.
The question I have for both of you, before actually we're going to go to the audience to see if you have any questions or comments on this, but the question I now have for both of you is, can you see whether an EPOC or a JAMS can add value in terms of driving better delivery for the outcomes that we want, which is ultimately why we're here. Joanne spoke about that in her address this morning. You can have the best growth in the world, growth numbers, inflation numbers, none of it matters unless people feel better off, unless our lives are all improved, right? So this accountability scorecard and all the work that you do, at the end of the day, is supposed to make our lives better. Otherwise, why bother? So my question to both of you is, can you see a way of bridging whatever shortcomings there are between, for example, in your reports, Auditor General, the reports that you produce that say you have a recommendation for certain things being done, or the politicians who come to you to make demands of, certain projects being executed, and then the implementation is probably not as solid as you would like. Do you think that something like this accountability scorecard can improve and take you from where you are now to one of securing the outcomes that we all would like to see?
If I start, yes. So, yes, I can see where it would help. So, one of my roles now is to support the work of the Auditor General. So when she makes a recommendation, the Public Accounts Committee endorses those recommendations or tweaks them or whatever. But once those decisions are made, my job then is to work with the Chief Officer team to try to deliver as many of those recommendations as possible. But if I can, I'm not going to put my hand up and say we do that in a very excellent way. I think we're okay because of all of the competing priorities that chief officers have. So if I'm saying to them, the Auditor General has recommended that you implement a new system in your ministry, and I want you to put your team on that, their minister is going to say, but I actually need them to deliver this project for me. So you're always going to have those competing interests, and we don't want to be growing the size of the civil service. So those are some of the challenges that we have to overcome. And we have to be innovative. We have to be flexible, adaptable, to work with the minister and find a way to deliver for him. Our job is to deliver for the government. That's the whole body of the civil service. That's what we're all about. But also then find ways to re-engineer our system based on what the Auditor General has said. Because on a lot of times what we find is that if we just simply implement what she recommended, our jobs become easier.
Right.
So if she made a lot many reports around capital projects and some of our delivery failures there, and then when we implemented a lot of what she recommended, things got easier. So it's about working smarter, and it's about being innovative, being flexible, adaptable. But again, my role is to make sure these things happen. Now, when I read the EPOC, and I was looking at their responsibilities, I kept thinking about the Auditor General, because some of the things that they do is some of the things that she helps promote, government accountability, government performance. So I sort of saw lots of synergies there, and I wondered how does that committee work with the Auditor General in Jamaica. So I think there's those kind of things that we would need to work out. But anything that helps drive delivery for the people of the islands has to be a good thing.
And what I'm also hearing you saying is that what should go in this scorecard, first and foremost, are her recommendations, as opposed to all of the wishes of...
No, a minister might say, but that can't take priority over my thing. So it's those nuances, those issues that we have to work on very carefully.
For sure.
Because
well, the design will be the make or break of it, yes.
Absolutely. Because our major priority is to deliver for the government,
Absolutely.
While keeping her happy. Yes.
All my performance audits are based on government priorities, so there should be a complete synergy, not a conflict in any way, shape or form between what I recommend and what the government's trying to achieve.
Yes.
I think the issue Franz is alluding to, though, is the immediacy of some of the day-to-day things that crop up and how that can crowd the longer-term, more fundamental drivers that are necessary. So an example we've recommended many, many times about National Development Plan, it's been mentioned this morning. nobody would argue, no politician of any ilk would argue that's not an important thing to do. I think the tension is the short-term expedience versus the long-term infrastructure, if you like, that's really, really necessary to drive improvement. So everything we do is based on the strategic policy statement and the most important thing. So our audit should be absolutely on point with what the government's trying to achieve. But I do recognise what Franz is saying in terms of the competing priorities. I think the other thing that I think would be really good about a balanced scorecard and publishing it and reporting on it is it will also sharpen the priorities, I think, for the government. Because also when you get a new government come in, you know, they've got to come to whether it's a group of independents or whether it's a party or a combination, there is immediately the honing down on what are the priorities, what's going to be in the strategic policy statement. And I think also if you know you're going to be reporting on it, it'll probably help hone that.
Exactly.
Again, one of the recommendations we've made many times is to move more towards an outcomes-based performance framework. At the moment, there's, you know, it's outputs, it's tasks. Not saying those things aren't important, but it's like ultimately, what are you trying to achieve through the, you know, through whatever area of government business it is. So I think that could probably help with sharpening all of that too.
Yeah.
Good.
And as to say, I agree, and the government of the day has charged the civil service with moving to an outcome-based budget.
Good.
I want to highlight the work that's being done in the Ministry of Financial Services. They're sort of doing a pilot on that Chief Officer Doc's last deal. So what it means is that the people we will be able to evaluate whether we are actually delivering the outcomes that the government wants. So I can put my hand up. We're very good at starting things, but we're not very good at evaluating and stopping things. And we need to know that the programs that we're putting in place are working. If it is an after-school program that we are spending lots of money on delivering better education for our children, that is something that we don't measure at the moment. So we agree with 100% with the Auditor General that that's the way we need to go. We've been doing more of an input budget, but now let's move the output to outcomes so that the people of the Cayman Islands will know whether these programs are working.
Excellent point.
If anybody would like to ask any questions, we have waiting for questions. So you use your phone, you scan in that QR code, and you can submit your questions. I'd like to ask a question if I could.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the question I'd like to ask the Auditor General really is, you have some great reports. We read them, they're provocative, they're illuminating. The question is, many times you're reporting on things that can't be acted upon now. So the question is the process, does it need reform where your reports can actually feed better into policy and the outlook? Oftentimes we are learning things after the fact.
We have done real-time audits, and it's got us into a bit of a pickle, to be honest. So I did a real-time audit on the Araya redevelopment, the airport redevelopment, when it was happening. And we got into all sorts of commercial issues with that, because I can say it now because we're long past that point in time, where the lead consultant wasn't managing the project effectively, and the airport authority were probably going to take legal action on that non-performance, but they wanted to keep them managing the contract. Anyway, I did the report. It was too sensitive to make public at the time, to your point, Will, and I think that's the problem. A lot of these things we can do in real time, but we fed that information into the government. So it did help with the negotiations, what we found and what we reported, but we put it into Parliament. We put it into Parliament to the MPs, asked them all to sign non-disclosure agreements, and needless to say, it got leaked. So and you could argue it's democracy, and you know that's that. I think that's the tension you get, that if you do things in real time that are going to be impactful, that are going to make a difference. Regen's another one. That probably, our report we did way back in 2021 has still not seen light of day because of the sensitivities. That we will probably get out in the next week, but it's tricky. So it is tricky. It is tricky. So we do tend to look to things that, look at programs and things as they're finished, or as they're ongoing.
And just to say that, yes, while some of those are dated, the lessons learned or the issues that the Auditor General highlights really build into some of the things then that we need to do better. So if we made mistakes, a year ago, the whole idea now is to not make those mistakes again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Again, one of my jobs is to make sure that when she's highlighting these things, that those things lessons are learned and things are implemented.
Good.
So
we
Marla,
make
we have another
progress.
question from the audience. With multiple ministries, it feels like there's a significant duplication in terms of HR, marketing, finance. Would it not be more efficient, cost, and accountability to centralize?
Yes, I guess that one's for me. Many years ago, maybe 2015, we decided not to keep a centralized HR and system, and we devolved that HR responsibility to chief officers. What we have learned with a new administration coming in, different ministries being set up, was that we can do shared services. So even though some of the ministries were expanded, we did not expand staff in HR, in finance. And it's actually been a great exercise to see that each ministry doesn't really need its own CFO. They can be shared services depending on the size of the ministry. We have been sharing HR staff across different ministries. There's now a conversation with my team around whether we can now do that across the civil service, be more centralized. So to answer to your question is yes, that is a good idea. I don't want to see the civil service growing. We want to make sure that we're more efficient and to make sure that we are, there's value for money. So lessons have been learned, and I think we will move more. You'll see more of that going forward in terms of shared services.
I like that. Before you go to the next question, I just wanted to make a point. So one day I calculated your budget here in Cayman is roughly just over $1 billion.
That's correct.
Right? When you calculate on a per capita basis this budget, it's the equivalent to a tiny country called Andorra and a big country called Singapore. And in Singapore, almost nobody has a car because public transportation is amazing. And most people live in government-built housing. So that tells you in Cayman that you have a very high cost structure and where the government spends, just about $1 billion a year on keeping this country going. So deriving efficiency is very important here. Will, do we have any more questions? I see we have 14 minutes.
Oh, there's plenty of questions. The next question deals for the Auditor General. Whose job is it to question if the Auditor General is correct with a recommendation?
Okay, I can talk about the accountability around me because there is a fair bit. As you would expect, we've got to lead by example, so you wouldn't expect us not to have some mechanism of accountability around us. So first off, our financial statements are audited every year. Berman Fisher currently audit us. But more importantly than that, in terms of our professional practice and how we're regulated and how we are reviewed, we work to standards, so we have all the areas of review before we actually get our reports out. So it's not just me doing it on my own. We have all the levels of review that you would expect to meet the international standards for auditing on the financial audit side. On the performance audit side, there is a global framework that the external offices of all countries sign up to, and you get assessed against this global framework. It's called the Supreme Audit Institute Performance Measurement Framework. We've had 2 reviews through that framework in the 8 and a bit years I've been here. We do them once every 5 years because we feel that's all we can manage. The full report, which is well over 100 pages, is on our website if people want to look it up, and we score relatively highly, particularly for a small audit office. but that assesses our practice on all the different audit disciplines, our corporate functions and everything.
Well done. Good for you.
It's important,
Yeah, of
because that's
course.
a really important question to be able to answer.
It is, it is.
One of the biggest challenges with accountability is the whole idea of what happens afterward, whether an action is to be taken.
Yeah.
What are your views on that type of, what's the next step after something is actually flagged as something being a problem?
I think that for me is the most difficult area. I've not just worked in Cayman, I worked in the UK too, and it was the same there. Things never move as quickly as I'd like them to move. I'm sure things don't move as quickly as the DG would like them to move. That's probably because we've got really high standards and we're really striving to get things better. The only way you can do that is, as we've just been discussing, by keep shining a light on it, keep reporting back. So when we make recommendations, as the DG says, they go through Parliament. Parliament then require government to submit a minute to Parliament saying what they're going to do. And then my office, and again, we never used to follow up, but I started that in my time. I just go back and we just review the follow-up to recommendations periodically. So nothing is left. We just keep going and going and going and going. And things do improve. Things do improve. Maybe not at the pace we'd all like to see sometimes, but they do get there.
But that's the power of having a scorecard. Something like the question that just came in, if there is something that's identified as a red flag or something went wrong, fixing it should be part of how you move forward, and that should be included in, at least that's my perspective, included in a scorecard going forward, so that you don't just make a mistake and oops, I made a mistake, and then you leave it. It's oops, I made a mistake, and we have to mitigate it and make sure it doesn't happen again, right? We have 10 minutes, Will?
Yeah, we got a couple more questions from the audience. Thank you very much for responding with that QR code. So this one is really operational, Deputy Governor. It's about government. What is government doing in terms of technology applications to improve its services and efficiency?
A lot. We are really working to ensure that we are offering the vast majority of our services online. The vast majority are. I'll give you an example of one of my greatest pain points for years had been DVDL, where everyone goes to license their car. And if people remember, you used to spend a half a day sitting in the office waiting for someone to license your car. We sent a team in there to look at it, to reform. And I met with the management support advisor who was going in. And she said, Deputy Governor, what is it that you want? What is the outcome you would like to achieve? And I said, I would like to look forward to licensing my car.
Look forward, okay.
Yes, that was the outcome that I want to achieve. And I must say that today, you don't have to go to DVDL at all. You can go to a private garage, you can get your car inspected, and you can go online. And I have tested this 2 years now. You can license your car in 9 minutes. I have done it. So that's a great example of us not accepting mediocre performance, going in, making some hard decisions, driving online, and that is happening across the civil service. We are also putting in a feedback mechanism on all our websites so that people can say, yes, the service is going well, or no, it's not. And we pay very close attention to what people are saying about the service that we provide. So those happy or not terminals that you see across the entire civil service, at the end of last year, they've been in place since late 2017. We had received 1.6 million touches on those happy or not terminals. And I'm very pleased to say that our happy rating is 93%. Now that is a great score. It also means that maybe 50,000 people were not happy. So that's a lot of people that are happy, but 1.6 million, 93% is a great score. But I get a printout every morning on my computer as to where the hotspots are. If there are lots of greens, but if there's reds, then I have a conversation with those people. So with the staff that are responsible. So it is very important that we look to move online. Now, we have to be aware that there are some people in our community that simply do not have the ability to go online. Mr.
Yeah.
Brian reminds us of that often. So we have to be aware of that. There are some people that will never, we want to use chat boxes to reduce the many complaints that no one answers their phone, probably because we get 10,000 calls sometimes in a few days. So it's very difficult to keep up with all of those. So we want to be innovative, have chat boxes, put more information on our website. But we have to be aware that a lot of Caymanians, a lot of residents, wants to pick up the phone and call somebody.
Yeah.
Or they want to come into the office and pay by cash. So we can't take that away, but those who do want to get on the beach and license their car, we need to be able to do that, and we have achieved that.
One thing I want to say, Deputy Governor, that I think, and of course, Honorable Tourism Minister, is these forms that we fill out to land here. The
Yes.
only other country in the Caribbean
That's
that
right.
has these paper
That's on the
forms
to-do
is
list.
Trinidad
Yes.
and Tobago.
Yeah, we are
right?
behind in that area. So
Yes.
stay tuned for that.
Okay, good. I'm looking forward to that one. And everybody on the plane is like, I don't have a pen. Because who does this anymore, right?
That's on the top of the list. Yes.
We have 6 minutes. I think maybe one more question, Will.
Okay. And Deputy Governor, we're friends, right?
Yeah. Let's hear it.
Just want to make sure. This is from the audience again. The Cayman Islands government is one of the largest employers. Why does it take so long to get things processed? Example, TNB license, lease, stamp, duty assessment, and can we be assured that this will appear on a scorecard?
It should.
Yeah, they should. A lot of it, listen, so you're never going to hear me make excuses. You don't get success building on excuses. If you make mistakes, those mistakes can turn into success, but not excuses. So not here to make any excuses at all. There are some areas where we absolutely need to get better. But a lot of times people don't understand the volume of applications, for example, that we get. A lot of these go to boards. Boards meet on a set basis. For example, trade and business licenses. A lot of those applications go to boards. So we are always looking to do things better, but I can guarantee you volume plays a huge role.
Yeah.
And of course, no one wants me to grow the size of the civil service. So, for example, the latter thing that you said around stamp duty section, there's probably 3 people that work in that department. It probably should be 7. But we have, don't want to be constantly growing the size of the civil service. These are decisions that a minister has to make. So it's our duty to get those information or those applications to ministers as quickly as possible. I have received the complaints that things are not moving faster. So I've charged the chief officer responsible to look into reform that area, make things a bit more accessible electronically. And that is actually happening. So listen, a few years ago when I took over the civil service, one of my measures for myself, how do I hold myself accountable, is how many times my phone rings where somebody else should have solved the problem. There was a time when my phone used to ring a lot. It doesn't now.
Oh.
It doesn't. The emails that I get now are, vast majority is complimentary, not a complaint. I do get complaints. That particular area is probably the last area that we have not made meaningful reform. In the majority of other areas, I'm very happy where we are.
Okay, so
Yes.
closing thoughts, please, Auditor General and then Deputy Governor.
Well, I suppose the thing that prompted Franz's answer, and I agree, is in governance terms, I think there are times when the division between the executive and the non-executive, whether it be the politicians and the civil service or the boards and the SAGC staff, can get a little bit blurred. So perhaps my challenge to politicians, civil service and everyone is really, can we look at what's administrative decision making and what's political decision making? Because whilst politicians should be allowed discretion, of course, I think there's a lot that could be done at an administrative level, because the criteria and the decision should be sufficiently clear that it doesn't need political input. So that would be my thought, adding on to that the final thing.
Thank you. Final thought?
Yes, but first of all, thank you for having us. When I told my team that we were coming on, they said, DG, do you want to do that? And I said, yes. I cannot give up an opportunity to talk about accountability. It doesn't really look that we're driving accountability if I don't show up. So I certainly wanted to make sure that I was here. I think we have a great story to tell about accountability. The civil service is not perfect. But we have made meaningful strides over the last few years in that area of accountability. There's no doubt we're changing our culture. We're moving away from, let me work around Mr. Manderson, to no, we're going to deal with Mr. Manderson and we're going to make sure that he's going to perform or he's going to join the private sector.
The private sector.
So that is where we are. But it would be remiss of me not to say that the whole Cayman Islands owes Ms. Sue Winspear a debt of gratitude for the work that she has done. Yes. She has held us to account. She has made the tough decisions, and she said she's accountable. Nobody tells her what to do. I'm very proud to say that she can get up here and say that. Not everywhere people can get up and say, I am not interfered with. I am allowed to do my job. So the fact that she's here saying that, I think is great. And our Chief Justice said it just last week as well.
Yes, she did.
So those are key wins for us.
Absolutely.
But thank you very much for having us, Ms. Winspear. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And I want to, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to personally congratulate both of you. You for your service here, and you're demitting next month. You for your 13 years, because both of you have made the Cayman Islands a better place. I mean, when you think about the accountability and the institutional capacity of this country, it's outstanding on a regional level, and you're part of that story. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.